welcome back to
Bunso
Bites.
Bites.
I am your host, Ami43.
And I'm your co-host, Chiggy.
And on today's episode, we're going to deep dive into the internet. I had come across this story. You know how there are some accounts that read Reddit stories? And this particular Reddit story kind of just stood out to me. And I actually sent it to Chiggy. Like, I sent him the video of it. And I asked him, I was like, what are your thoughts on this? And we had this crazy, interesting discussion. So then we decided, let's turn this into a podcast episode because I'm really interested in it. It's such a I don't even want to say unique situation. It's an interesting situation, and I guess just getting your opinion, my opinion on it is going to be really, really fun. So
all right. So I have it pulled up here. This is under r/relationship advice, and the title is "My 37 male wife, 35 female, punched a woman in the face in public in front of our daughter, 6 female."
Mm-hmm.
I don't know how to feel about this. My wife is 8 months pregnant, and last night we went to a restaurant with our daughter that was surprisingly crowded for a weeknight. We were waiting for our table when my wife grabbed my arm and said, "That woman over there keeps staring at us." I told her not to think too much into it, as she has a tendency to point out creepy people a lot. We got our table, and while we were waiting for our food, the woman she pointed to came up to us and asked if she could touch my wife's belly. My wife said, "I'd rather you not." But the woman did anyway, and my wife stood up. The woman looked at our daughter and said, "What a beautiful little girl," and tried to pick her up by the armpits. My wife then pushed the woman back and punched her in the face. I took her arm and got my daughter, and we got out of there. I asked my wife why she did that, and she said, "Are you kidding? A complete stranger tried to pick up our daughter." I told her she overreacted, and that such force was not necessary. I had some reservations about letting her go out in public while pregnant, but I don't really think I can at all now. Not if she's going to act like this. I don't really know what to do. She still seems to think she did nothing wrong. I have never acted like this in public, and neither has she. The fact that she likely traumatized our daughter by displaying such violence in front of her is something that's making me look at her slightly different. What should I say to her?
Ooh, there's a lot to unpack here. Okay, before we even, because we're going to break this down, y'all. There's so much in this post about his language, or this, and I say his because he identified as a male in there.
Mm-hmm.
His language, the way the situation unfolded, and obviously his reaction to her reaction. And so before we even deep dive into the nitty gritty of it, do you side in just generally speaking, do you side with the guy in the story, or do you side with the girl in the story?
In this situation, I side with the wife.
Okay.
Only because the stranger came up to her, asked if she could touch her belly, and she said she'd rather not.
Right.
And then proceeded to do so anyways.
Mm-hmm. And
And then preceding that, she tried to pick up her daughter, which is such a red flag.
yeah.
I know that even the people we hang out with, sometimes they have reservations when they want us, or they do not want us to hold their child.
Yeah.
And, they'll tell us, but for a complete stranger to just come out of nowhere and be like, "Hey, come here, little kid," that's kind of creepy.
That's very creepy. And and I think you touch on such a good point with we have friends who have kids, and 99% of the time we ask permission to even hold them. And these are our friends. We've seen them go through the birthing process of this child. We've been through, so much, but we still ask permission as their friend, let alone a stranger. Oh my goodness. It boggles my mind. Absolutely.
Yeah. So for me, I'm with the wife on this one, only because, for one, she is still protecting the family.
Yeah.
Just her trying to reach out and touch her belly. She has an unborn child in there. You know, she may have something laced in her hand, or I don't know, she may pull out a weapon last second. And then second, she's trying to grab her born child. So just like, well, that's 2 red flags in a row. So for her defending her family, I agree with that, but I can also see where the husband is coming from at the same time too.
Okay. And okay, so before we get into that, I mean, I think it's pretty clear. I agree with the wife in this situation. I think that number one, she expressed dissent, specifically in like, you know, was asked, "Can I touch you?" No,
Right.
and still was touched. You know, if I were in that situation personally, because I can be very hypersensitive to strangers, I mean, immediately I'd be pushing this person away from me and like my bubble and my vicinity, and I'm assuming that, like, I'm kind of guessing maybe they're in like a booth or something, and you know the child is like next to them or something like that. So I would just in inherent reaction push myself and my child away from this person who attempted to touch me, or if they did touch me, then I would immediately react that way. So I agree where I don't think it was wrong for the wife to react. Now, going into how she reacted, what were you going to say about that? Because you were saying, like, you can kind of agree with the guy.
Oh, so the guy was saying, you know, was it, like, right to show that type of violence in front of their daughter?
Oh, that's
right?
part. Okay,
So, first off, no, it's not right. You know,
kids don't do violent things.
Any type of violence in front of, you know, the presence of minors is a bad thing for me, at least.
Yeah.
But in this case, she's justified because she's trying to protect her family.
In the situation of her reactionary protection, I guess you could say. Yeah.
Right. I think at the same time, though, her use of force in the situation was overly dramatic.
You think so?
Yes. I like to watch a lot of like police interactions on YouTube. And
those he likes to watch like the police cam and dash cams type stuff.
Yeah.
Can't watch it, too much anxiety.
there's a lot of things that I like to look into when I'm watching those things. So like there's a lot of things about the law and things about protecting your own rights, like your civil rights. And so I think that if the woman that was punched, if she were to bring this to court, the woman that punched her would most likely lose.
Oh, yeah, you think so?
Yes, because her action was unjustified.
Okay, like the punch part itself, not
Right.
necessarily the her reacting, but the action of punching.
Now, there's a very like thin line and like very specific terms used when defining what assault and battery is.
Right.
I know one of them is the unwanted touching of another person.
Yeah.
And then, of course, once you have one, you have the other if you are assaulted.
Okay.
And so, in this case, the wife that punched the woman, she assaulted her. But then at the same time, I'm guessing that she had some form of battery because she was touched as well.
Oh.
Right?
Okay.
So at this time, if the pregnant woman, the wife, when she was touched, that is already a form of battery. Okay? And so for her to punch her is not justified because it wasn't the same type of force used to her.
Okay. So like a touch doesn't equate to a punch.
Right. So she can push her away.
Which is what I was saying
Right?
earlier. Yeah.
You can push her hand away.
Yeah.
And that would be
Hey, no.
justified force.
Yeah.
Yes. But her punching her is unjustified because
see.
she really didn't pose any threat to the wife.
In theory, right.
Yes.
Like we don't know, but theoretically she was just kind of like doing one of these, but that doesn't justify a reactionary punch in return.
Correct. And so I could see like the man's kind of point of view of in in him saying that he kind of views his wife a little differently now, and her actions are kind of unjustified at that scenario.
Okay. Now, and I'm curious. I don't know, and I don't know if you know, or if anyone in the comments would like to enlighten us, if you're into, or how it works legally. But in the case of, and again, this is very specific to this situation, where the approaching woman or the creepy woman asked permission, and then the wife, we're saying in the story, we're calling her wife, the wife in this story explicitly expressed dissent, and then that dissent was then ignored. I wonder if that has any, and I'm saying this because I'm like thinking in the case of like, when they do like sexual harassment and stuff like that, that's a big deal.
Right.
And so I wonder if it kind of would have a similar case to go in favor, I guess, to say to the wife. Not saying that, again, we're not promoting violence here, but it was just kind of like, at least from what I read in this story, it seems like the wife in the story, everything was very reactionary for her. The way I equate it in my brain is there's this phenomenon of mothers who can display superhuman strength when their child is in danger. And it's kind of like the same idea of your child is potentially in danger. This stranger is picking up your child or attempts to pick up your child, and your mother bear kind of opens and reacts more of instinctually rather than trying to think of like, and again, if I were in this situation, I don't know if I would, I don't know though. I can't say, I'm not a mom. In my head, I'd push the woman away. But also, I don't know what kind of righteous fury I would have where, I'd go hard on her too, being like, get away from my family, get away from my child. How dare you even think about touching my child? Like, I don't know. So I wonder all those things, especially in the legal, like if this case were to be brought to court, like how would that be considered, or how would that be brought forth? Because I feel like that's an important distinction in this story, that she expressed dissent. She said, and even from the beginning of the story, she did not have a good feeling towards this. Well, I mean, call it women's intuition, but she just didn't have a good feeling about it. And actually, so I did want to go from like beginning to end of this story, because there are so many facets about this that are just, it's so interesting to me. And I find this husband character to be very not to my taste, I guess you could say. So from the very beginning, he points out, and I'm looking at it on the screen over here, y'all, so don't think that I'm trying to ignore you or anything, but he said, I told her not to think too much into it, as she has a tendency to point out creepy people a lot. And creepy, he has in quotations. Now, as someone who is so wonderfully in love with someone who lives on the seat of my pants every single day of my life, and I point out things that make me uncomfortable to you all the time. Right. Well, first of all, do you think that is a bad quality to have, number one? And by bad quality, I mean, like, does it bother you that you're like, oh yeah, she has a tendency to do that? Or and like I said, as someone who, you're dating someone with a lot of anxiety, like, do you, like, how do you deal with that as my partner, I guess, is a question.
So first, I want to say that it's not a bad quality to have.
Yeah.
Just being keen of your surroundings, and the people that you are around with. Yeah. It's actually a good quality, because you never know in this day and age what may happen or what people may do. And I actually kind of have that sense as well. Yeah. Like when I walk into a room, or if I'm like standing around in like a public mall or something, I like to observe my surroundings and not just like be ignorant to what's around me. And so I kind of get him saying that and her having that tendency. Okay. But I don't think it's a bad quality.
Yeah.
And can you reiterate what was the second part of your question?
No, that was it. Just like how you deal with that as someone. I'm so sorry, Charmander. How you deal with that as because I know it's not even just people, y'all. Like I will point out that wall makes me feel weird. Like I say the weirdest things to Chiggy all the time because as an anxious person, I just kind of imagine the worst of all things. Something that reminds me of, we regularly visit a building that likes to creak a lot, and the HVAC system will kind of like turn on, and it makes every single pipe in that whole building freak out and whistle, and it's the most uncomfortable feeling. And it took me over a year to even feel semi okay. And I guess, and Chiggy knows, like, he had to kind of, ground me a lot of times whenever the I don't know, was it the AC turning on, or I don't even know what it was.
Either AC or the heater turned on.
And just like all the pipes in the building would start whistling and screaming, and I would literally jump out of my seat sometimes because I couldn't. I don't know. It made me so uncomfortable, and I was thinking the building was gonna fall on top of my head every single time it happened. Because as an anxious person, you just kind of think and assume the worst. Or there's so many times where we will be in public and we're walking, and it's not even necessarily that I think the person is creepy, but someone will just stand too close to me, and I just cannot handle that. Wow, I really sound like I have so many problems. Mm-hmm. I kind of do. But, and more often than not, Chiggy will either like kind of switch places with us, or he'll like hold my hand to make sure reassure me that I'm okay. And so it just, like I said, when the way he phrased it of she has a tendency to point creepy people out, I was like, anyone who has anxiety does that, number one. And number two, she's probably just, like I said, women's intuition. And so I don't like the way he made it seem like she was making a big deal out of nothing, when in reality, at least as the story panned out, she turned out to actually be a creepy person.
Right.
So moving on to the next part of the story. So they're talking about how we talked about this. So again, the wife explicitly said, "I'd rather you not," when she wanted to touch the wife's belly, and then she tried to lift up the child, which again, if it was me, I mean, I know for sure I would react. I would definitely push this person away. I'm curious, how would you react? Like, let's say you were out with our potential future child, and if I wasn't even there or whatever, and someone tried to pick them up, or someone tried to do something similar to this creepy lady, like, how would you react? Or how do you think you would? Because we can't really say now. We're just kind of anticipating, or imagining how we would react in the situation.
So me personally, if this was me in this scenario,
yeah,
if I don't know you, I don't want you touching my children, unless you are a medical professional.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Right?
Important distinction. Yes.
And I guess the only other instance where I would allow a stranger to touch my child would probably be like if I'm just flat out struggling, and like I'm like dropping things on the floor, and I in this case I might have more than one child with me. I could probably ask a stranger to be like, "Hey, can you stop my child from running away?" I think that's probably the only other iteration I would ask someone to touch my child, but to just be out of nowhere, "Oh, hey, can I pick you up?" No.
Right. And it's interesting that you say that, because in my head I would do the opposite. Not that you're wrong. It's just in my head I would, let's say I have my child, and then I'm trying to hold some groceries in my hand. Mm-hmm. I would ask someone, "Can you hold these groceries really quick while I adjust holding my child in my arms, and then I get my basket in order," or something like that. Or I would ask the bag boy at the grocery store, "Can you unload my cart? I'm sorry, my child is being a little unruly right now, and I can't. I don't want to, I don't want to let go of him," or something like that. I say him. We don't have children, but in that sense, I would do we can't say for every situation, right? We don't know. And I'm speaking as a child who I very distinctly remember there was one time I ran into the street and I was with my mother, and I love her for this, because in the middle of like she pulled me to the sidewalk and she slapped me so hard on my behind like in front of everyone. Like we were in the middle of the street, but did I ever run out into the street again? Absolutely not. Absolutely not. And so I cannot, children are unpredictable. They don't know. Their ignorance is their bliss, right? And so they can do reckless things. So this is not, I want to clarify, this is not like an overarching, this covers every situation. We're just kind of speaking in hypotheticals and theoreticals here, because obviously we do not have children. But it is very interesting that, yeah, like I was about to say, we thought about it the same, but in an opposite like solution kind of a way, which is actually really cool, because then it's kind of like a different way of thinking. And another thing I wanted to note, because and we mentioned it earlier, but I really do want to make a point of this, and I'm doing this because I have I have two very specific friends that I'm thinking of who recently had children, and I know that one of them is a little bit more relaxed when it comes to us holding their children, and I say us, anyone, within our friend group holding their children. And then I also know one who is not as comfortable, for different reasons. They have different health, whatever, I know I'm not here to judge or say anything, but I really find it, as someone who, I guess we have so many friends who have kids, but it's so important to respect the parents' wishes for their children.
Right.
And not just first of all, that's their child. You should have nothing to do with it. And like, you should have nothing to contribute to that anyways. But in a world where there's so many uncertainties and there's so many things and craziness, if a parent wants to be extra protective of their child and not have every single person that they know holding their child or whatever, that's perfectly reasonable and that's perfectly fine. And I really don't like how there are some people out there who feel it's their duty to be adamant about, well, no, it'll boost their immune system, or, oh no, I'll show you how to hold them properly. Let the parent be a parent. Let them make their decisions, because it's not your place. It's no one's place other than the parents, and that's their relationship with their child, and kudos to all of our friends who are parents. A lot of our friends are amazing parents, and I know Chiggy and I will probably be asking y'all for all the help and advice when that time comes for us.
Definitely.
So I know we got a little bit off track, but I really wanted to fixate on that particular point because it really is important. Like if a parent ever tells you, no, I don't want you carrying my child, or no, I don't, whatever the parent's preference is for their child, it should be honored and respected, because the parent knows their child more than the child itself half the time. So it's like, you really have to, the parent is trying their best for their child. So I don't think it's right to impose in any way. Obviously this is completely discounting extenuating circumstances, but we're just kind of speaking as in a general, like I said, our friends who are great parents to their kids. But we'll go back to the story. We're going to the next section. This is the part that I was like, my nostrils flared when I read this. So he continues on of saying, he asked his wife why she did that. Are you kidding? Complete stranger tried to pick up our daughter. You and I both expressed that, we would, in a situation like that, we would probably react in a protective way as well. But the statement that follows this is what, my sass came out so hard. He says, I had some reservations about letting her go out in public while pregnant. Pause. Hold on. Wait a minute. Rewind. Did this man really just say that he does not trust his wife because she's pregnant? And I mean, let's extrapolate here. Homeboy's 37, wife is 35, their child is 6. Theoretically speaking, they have been married at least 6 years, if not 7. and then even possibly even more so. And then he's going to say, I have reservations about my wife being pregnant. Well, first of all, she's been pregnant before. Second of all, why? Like, in what situation would her being pregnant have anything to do with affecting how she is in public, other than being pregnant? If anything, it's better because then you can get expectant mother parking, which is closer to the door. That's how I see it. I mean, I don't know. I'm curious. What are your thoughts on that? Because that blew my mind.
Okay, so I probably only have one talking point on him having some reservations for his wife to be out in public while being 8 months pregnant. For her to be...
Is she 8 months pregnant?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
She's 8 months pregnant. For her to be that far along in her pregnancy and going out and about, and, you know, like in this case, this is just a restaurant.
Right.
But, like, if she were to go out to, like, a crowded area and she has, you know, very close proximity to other people, like, say she's on a crowded bus and, you know, the bus stops abruptly and someone falls
Jerks
into her.
Yeah.
You know, I could see that type of reservation.
Okay.
But this is just a restaurant.
Yeah.
You know, you have a somewhat personal space where you're sitting at that table or booth.
Yeah.
So I don't really see his point in having a reservation in that or in any other type of situation.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't really quite agree with that.
Yeah. And I don't know. I'm extrapolating solely on Homeboy's verbiage of all of this, like the way he presented the story, because we don't know. We were not here. This story is actually 3 years old, if I'm not mistaken.
Is.
Yeah. So, you know, we don't really know. We're just guessing here and reacting clearly. But yeah, I cannot fathom. I mean, I can see what you're saying where it's like, oh yeah, she's further along in her pregnancy. Arguably speaking, a little bit on the older side of a pregnancy. Like the woman herself is a little bit older. So, you know, it's just really, when I read that, my nostrils flared so hard. I almost gave myself a nosebleed. It's flared so hard. Okay. And then the last part, which, we were discussing this earlier, where it's like, how his ultimate, or his, reaction to everything, but he doesn't know what to do. He's like, I never acted like this way in public, neither has she, and the fact that she probably traumatized our daughter. And I want to go back to what Chiggy was saying earlier, because I do think you make a good point. I think in a perfect world and society, we would never want to present a violent solution as a solution to our children, to any child, right? Because in a perfect world, we can all be mature adults, and if I say no, then you will just walk away. But we don't live in a perfect world, and one of the things that Chiggy mentioned was, you know, we don't know what was in that lady's hands, like when she touched the pregnant lady, or when she picked up the daughter, or attempted to pick up the daughter, like if there was anything that, you know, she could have done to harm the daughter. I mean, you know, we're extrapolating. We really don't know. But in this day and age, how many stories do you hear on the regular of people, you know, just trying to open their car doors and there's drugs on it, or people trying to, you know, just walk to their car at night and then they get who knows what. So, you know, it's not unheard of, I don't think, or it's not that's not even the right phrasing. It's not unreasonable, I think, for the woman to assume the worst in this situation, particularly since from the very beginning of them walking to the restaurant, she's like, I got weird vibes. I got weird vibes, and I don't like that particular person. And that very person was the one who walked up to them, tried to do the tried to touch her belly and try to pick up her daughter. So it's a very unique situation. Again, I cannot say for full certainty how I would react. I know that I would react, though, and I know that I would do so in a way that would protect myself, as well as more importantly, my child, wherever, you know, in that capacity. Ideally, I wouldn't necessarily punch the person, but
Right.
I mean, maybe a firm push away or get out of my personal bubble.
Stiff arm.
Yeah. Something like that. And so yeah, I think it's not necessarily a right or wrong in this situation. I just agree that the woman was justified in her actions, and obviously I hope that whatever ended up of this, they're safe. You know, that's kind of the most important thing.
There is one other thing I wanted to touch up on.
Mm-hmm.
Let me try to read the story real quick. Okay. All right. So there's one other thing I want to touch up on this story.
Sure.
In the last paragraph, he says, "I don't really know what to do. She still seems to think she did nothing wrong."
Yeah.
Now, of course, her punching the woman in the face was wrong.
Yeah.
Okay.
Objectively speaking.
And I know you were trying to talk about this earlier in the episode, but you were saying like the woman tried to pick up her daughter, and you know, we don't know that if she tried to impose once or many times. And so a very specific instance came into my mind.
Okay.
And it happened here in Virginia as well.
Oh.
Do you remember a story about a prank YouTuber that was pranking a guy at the mall, and he would not leave him alone. He was just continually harassing him, and the guy that he was harassing pulled out a gun and he shot him, and it was tried in court, and the guy that shot him won.
Yeah, I recall that. Was that here in Virginia?
It was in Virginia.
This
Not in our area, but it was in Virginia.
Yeah. Okay. It's ringing a very slight bell, but the details are fuzzy. So the one who shot the prankster won the case.
Correct.
Okay.
Because that was self-defense.
Yeah.
So we don't know in this story if the woman that tried to pick up the daughter, if she was harassing them in that case, where like she continually asked or made several attempts to either touch the belly or pick up the daughter. We don't know that. It's a very quick and concise story. So as we read through it, it seems like it's only a one and done type thing.
Right.
And so we don't know the full details of it. It would be nice if there was a video of it, but you know, I don't think there is.
It's a Reddit story, yeah.
So another thing to think about, which is what I wanted to talk about at first, but the story came up first. Since the wife punched the woman, and if she were to get tried, and if she had lost the court case,
Okay.
by then, you know, she would probably have already given birth. And so if she was locked up for assault, she would have left her family, the husband, with the 7-year-old daughter, as well as a newborn child
baby,
to be taken care of to him alone.
Yeah.
And so I think that's something that she would have to both him and her to think about, is that she did do something wrong. But in the wife's eyes, in that specific scenario, she thinks that she did nothing wrong.
Yeah.
But of course she did. So
I mean, and I think it really just comes into question, just like what we were saying earlier, where in the court, what specific details are they going to consider? And I would even argue that, like, because this would probably, I don't think it'll go, if this were to go to court, it wouldn't go super, super high. So it's like, what are the local regulations and state regulations, you know, or state specific rules on this type of a thing? And, you know, how much is the consent part considered, or how much is, what are the self-defense details and specifications? We are not lawyers. We are not professionals in this at all. He is an enthusiast in it, based solely on YouTube videos, which is totally fine. But I think that at the end of the day, the woman was right to react. I think that reacting violently is not good. But, I mean, as someone who, like, a long time ago, I studied martial arts too, sometimes you really are, self-defense is it's like it's a protection thing, right?
Right.
So again, trying to take those things into account. But I agree, you don't want to be, and you shouldn't necessarily be overly violent in any way. In violence is not the answer. And even if it was a simple push, or like or even if it was like I run away, like I hold my child and I step away, or I step behind my husband or something as a defense rather than offense, that would probably be a better solution. Yeah. But we'll never know. We don't know the specifics to this situation, because like I said, I know that in moments that we can feel threatened, we truly can become, it's instinctual that you're fight or flight is a thing. And so in this moment she chose fight. Whether or not that's correct, I don't know, but she did it as a protective reaction. So, and I think that in itself is what justifies it.
Okay. Do you think that in this scenario the daughter was traumatized?
Yeah, because some stranger tried to pick her up.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't even say that the daughter was traumatized in a, she saw violence. There's a part of me that says it showed the daughter that it's okay to stand up for herself. Mm-hmm. Like, if she's in a situation where she needs to break free or to fight, then I don't think that's wrong. Especially as a woman, I think it's important that if a woman feels the need to fight out of a dangerous situation, she should be able to do so in the right way. But I don't know, because I mean, and even then, I don't even know how violent of a punch this was. This could have just been like a get away from me, like that, but it could also have been like a full on like Manny Pacquiao jab in the face. I don't know. Like it's kind of, there's a lot to consider in that avenue, I guess.
Yeah. The title does say that the wife did punch her in the face.
In the face, yeah, that's true. I mean, but again, if it was a punch, it's just like to body language, right? Because I could be punching you in the face, but I'm stepping back because I'm like, oh, get away from me.
Yeah.
But there's also, I'm punching you in the face.
Yeah.
Like, I'm getting in your face. I'm going to punch you in the face.
So it could be anywhere from a graze to a full-out knockout.
Right.
So
right.
We don't know.
We don't know. But yeah, I'm solely thinking about it as, I think if anything, the girl learned that if she needs to stand up for herself, she should. But I'm also just I'm on your side, where it's like I would never want to elect to show my child a violent solution if I had the choice.
Yeah. I mean, I personally think that yes, the daughter is traumatized, but it is up to the parents to decide, can we reinforce this scenario with positive criticism or feedback, or is it just, no, she's scarred for life now, so what she thinks is that, if I'm going to be touched in any unwanted way, that I react with violence.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah. No, I could see how that could be a trauma, but I could also see that with the appropriate instruction and parenting, because we love therapy, but I mean, again, and it would truly just be explaining to the child over and over and over again, probably, but explaining to them that, because, okay, you're going to say, oh, so the child, if they're ever touched unwantedly, they're going to, react violently. Well, But if they are touched unwantedly and especially inappropriately, maybe they should. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So there's a difference and you have to be able to, as a parent, make that distinction for your child. That's the more important thing, I think, concerning specifically their daughter and how they would, have to handle the consequences of this particular incident.
Yes. And finally, I guess in the last sentence it says, "What should I say to her?" So what advice would you have to the husband in speaking to his wife?
Well, sir, I already disagree with the way that you present your wife in this story and the language in which you use to talk about your wife and even your daughter. I think you make some good points in a sense, as Chiggy was saying earlier. We don't want to use violence as an answer. Your wife was 8 months pregnant. Maybe being out in public wasn't your fondest idea. But if your wife, first of all, you chose her as your partner, so you should trust her and her judgments. And if she felt so threatened and in her safety and in your child's safety that she felt the need to react, maybe something you should consider is, where in that situation as her partner could I have helped? Number one. Could I have maybe protected? Number two, because you know that your wife is in a vulnerable position as a 8-month pregnant woman. And number three, if you could have, if there was a way for you to have de-escalated the situation, rather than watching the interaction happen and then your wife just having to go through what she had to go through. Because we're talking about the daughter being traumatized. Bet money your wife's traumatized. I just had a stranger touch my pregnant belly. I just had a stranger try to pick up my child. Oh, I'm freaking out now. My anxiety is through the roof now. So, dear husband, be a partner to your wife. Listen actively to your wife's side of the story and communicate with her your concerns, saying that you didn't appreciate the violence or you didn't appreciate how things panned out, but also being the mature partner in taking the next step of, well, what could I have done to help the situation, to aid to aid you as my wife, and what could I have done to make you feel safer? I think that's the biggest thing.
I completely agree with that. What should you say to your wife? Sir, you need to apologize first.
Ooh, okay. I wasn't trying to be that mean, but hey.
In the story, he was saying that his wife was already pointing out this creepy person, as soon as they got there. And if that doesn't throw up some red flags for you and you don't take notice of it, that says something about yourself.
He said it.
I think that also, because it wasn't stated in the story, we don't know. It seemed like he had a lack of action.
Yes, very much so.
So, I could have, if someone had tried to touch your belly and you had said no, and I didn't do anything, yes, that's my bad. But if that person was going to continue to pick up our child, then the husband should have, done something, stood up and, reiterated, hey, no, we don't want you to touch our child.
Please step away.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Do something. But it seemed like, because there was nothing said in the story, it seemed like he did nothing.
Yeah.
So, there are some good points that you pointed out. There was a lack of action. There was just things that he didn't do that could have helped out the situation and him to de-escalate it. So, kudos on those.
Yeah. And I genuinely say that as someone who I've experienced situations just in public where Chiggy has intervened to help de-escalate a situation. Whether it was like a misunderstanding between me and another person, whether it was I was driving and I was very angry at someone and Chiggy told me to not be angry at them. But I say that too as, I mean, I don't know how much I do it for you because you tend to just be generally significantly calmer than I am most of the time.
True.
But at the end of the day, Chiggy is my partner. I am his partner. If something were to happen to Chiggy and I was there and I didn't do anything, that says more about me and vice versa. If something were happening to me and Chiggy was with me and he wasn't helping me, it's kind of like, what? Like it doesn't make sense, at least for us in our relationship. And so, yeah, I genuinely think that he really needs to talk to her. And I mean, you said it, he got to apologize. And there's nothing wrong with apologizing. Makes you the bigger person, makes you more mature, I think. So, yeah, you have any final thoughts?
No, I think we did a pretty good job going through this story, revealing our thoughts, sharing our personal takes on it. And so I think that's going to be a wrap for here.
Yeah. Let us know your thoughts about the story, or if you happen to know how it works in the eyes of the law, because we don't fully know, but we've speculated a lot here. So let us know what you guys think and comment down below. Don't forget to like and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you guys next time. Bye.